we're going to put the new sensors on the intake, on the throttle body. So there's our throttle position sensors. There's a flat on the centerpiece of the sensor, goes to the flat on the shaft of the throttle body. And there's a little locating pin that goes to the little hole on the throttle body to locate it, and then the two attaching screws. So that's going to go that way. Should go that way. So you don't tear the new O-ring, just some Sil-Glide or some type of O-ring safe lube. So just on that O-ring you can put a little bit in the bore as well. And then that's going to go in there. Just be careful you don't pinch the O-ring. We'll have to see if we got some screws. I don't see any with the sensor. Don't have a screw for the IAC, so Sean will have to steal it from the old throttle body. So I just borrowed one from the TPS. Just so we can bolt it up in place. There. So now we can get to mocking up our harness. Now normally the harness would lay on top. I'll go grab it and show you how it would sit. Alrighty, so if you notice all these green stickers on all the connectors for our engine harness here, Dario's already gone through and thinned out the harness. So this would be, you know, what you would need to put it into whatever vehicle you're swapping it into. Got your power input to the harness for the PCM over here. You have your ignition power, you have your data connectors, all that, and then you know, you could fire this up, program it, and it would run. But I like to thin the harness, or not thin the harness, but I like to reroute everything so that the harness is hidden, right? So we're going to tuck this thing, we're going to try to hide as many wires as we can so that you can actually see, you know, how nice and tidy the engine bay is. You can look and appreciate kind of the engine itself. So that takes a bunch of time, but I'll take this harness over to the intake manifold over there, and we'll mock this up into position how it would normally run, and you'll see what I mean when I say we're gonna hide all the wiring, okay? So when I went to sort out what all these connectors are for, some of them I recognize, others I had to go through and look at the wiring schematic and basically trace the wires back to the PCM connectors. So now everything's labeled. This one here is the driver's side bank for the injectors. This one over here is the passenger side bank. We got our knock sensor wiring. We got camshaft position sensor. You know, everything's sorted out so we know what it is. Let's go have a look at that intake. Here is the fabricated intake that Sean's going to use on his 5.3. So it's a nice, pretty looking sheet metal intake. He's got a 92 millimeter throttle body over here. If I just take the harness and I lay it across how it's supposed to go. So this is kind of how that side would be. And you have connectors. There we go. So you would have the injectors kind of going down the side on top of the fuel rails. You're going to have IC, so this wiring is going to go over here to the throttle body stuff. This is number 7, so you can have the injectors going that way. Coil harness like that. TPS sensor, that's going to go down there. And it's really going to be ugly. It's going to be on top. It's going to be cluttered up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the loom off of all this. We're going to condense some of this. We're going to wrap it, rewrap it, maybe shorten some of the wires. And we're going to have it go from underneath down the center of the valley. And then I'm just going to run the injector connectors up from between the runners and then plug into the injectors up here. So if I do it right, it's going to be super tidy. It's going to be super functional. So the injectors, I can run through the openings, and then I can kind of just go into my IAC, my TPS, my alternator wiring, my coolant temp sensor wiring. So it's basically going to be all underneath the plenum of the intake. Main harness is going to come in from the cab of the vehicle behind the intake. So we're going to have a grommet or a pass-through behind the intake manifold. So really it's going to be a center point where all the wires are going into the engine compartment, and the rest of it's going to be completely hidden. So that's the general idea. This is the part that takes a whole bunch of time. It's not crazy difficult, it's just huge amount of time. So I'll do as much as I can loose with all the components here on the bench, and you'll just basically set up a station with soldering iron, heat shrink, cutters, and just kind of go bit by bit till it's neat and tidy. And you won't have all of this nasty crap, nasty loom in the engine bay. It's going to be all neat and tidy, hopefully. Okay, so here is our first side of the intake. There is our IAC, TPS, alternator wiring is going to go up. This is power to the output of the alternator. Then this is our coolant temp sensor. Everything's kind of tucked down at the intake. So I put the other side on just so you can see as a reference. It's not overly offensive, but you know, you're going to have the loom, you're going to have all the runs for the injector leads, and then you're going to have the coil wire on a factory setup. And this is a really nice, pretty intake. So if that's all underneath and not on the top, then this is what we're going to see. Nice, clean. I'm going to wrap all of the feeds, right? So that's going to be all wound up nice and tight. Underneath, this is going to be all rewrapped harness, and then I have to, because I've changed where the wires are going, I have to cut out and shorten or lengthen wires. So all this spaghetti this is going to be cut out, and then I'm going to now create a new harness with my new branches, I guess. There you go. One side roughed in. Got to do the other side. Add in starter solenoid wires, wires for the fan control, things like that. All it is time. And then we don't have to have all this nasty tape and loom. Blah, blah.